I'm going to jump in here and introduce three really special people who have created this amazing company called Wayforth Collective. All of them have a tremendous amount of experience in leading projects and have come together to create a company that helps nonprofits work on some of their higher stake projects that need to come together and need real expertise attached to them. So today they're going to be talking about moving from dreaming to doing. So with that, I want to introduce Jen Hamill and then also her co-workers, Brandon and Panith, are with them. Brandon, just to give a real quick intro, Brandon has 12 years of experience leading projects, 9 years in social service management. He's an ordained minister, and he's up in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. So welcome, Brandon. We're so glad you're with us. And then also, Panith is their lead non-governmental organization. She's been leading non-governmental organizations programs for 12 years. And she has also been in the industry for over 20 years, 8 professionally. She is a project leader for 5 years, and she is currently in Texas. So thank you and welcome, Panith. And then, of course, we have Jen Hamill. Jen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your company and go into greater depth. And then also, y'all get your pens and papers ready because you're going to want to take notes with all the things that they are going to download to us, whether you have a small project or a large project. So, Jen, I will welcome you to Sure Connections.
Hi, thank you so much. It's nice to see all you guys. I will say to appreciate the note-taking shout out. What I'm going to show you, I'll go through a slide deck, but we will make a PDF of it and send it to all of you guys when you're done. So don't feel you have to screenshot or anything else like that. If something does resonate with you, I will be sending this over. So let me introduce myself. I get this started. My name's Jen Hamill. I'm very grateful, Wayne and Mary Beth, for you guys inviting us here. I'm founder and CEO of Wayforth Collective, and Panith, she said, lives in Houston, and Brandon in Philly. I live in Denver. I'm here with my husband, who's a firefighter, and 2 kids who don't feel like kids anymore because they're 11 and 15, but they're kids to me. So, and I've just always loved turning ideas into reality. When I was thinking back on this, even in high school, I remember getting super kind of impatient with friends when they would talk about things over and over and over and over and never do them. Like, oh, wouldn't this road trip be great? We should do this event. We should do this party. And they kept talking about it. I'm like, okay, like, do you want to do this or not? Patience is not my strength. But I would ask you, do you want to do this or not? If so, I'll make it happen. But if not, just kind of stop talking about it. And so I didn't know back then, but I was wired for something called project management. And it's, the ability to take this big idea, break it down into its finer components and work with people to get it done. So I've been using these skills for the past 25 years, and 16 of those years were at a nonprofit called American Bible Society. And so 2017, my time at ABS came to a close, it was hard. It was unexpected. It was sad, but it was God's leading. I remember taking some time trying to find a normal job, like a real job, one of those with like paychecks and PTO and retirement. And as I was looking, I realized I didn't care about what these companies did that I was possibly applying for. And I kept feeling like, no, like God hasn't given me this crazy assortment of skills and all this experience to just go like earn a buck. And so the thought of starting a business kind of hit me, but I was like, no, that was not on my adulthood bingo card. That wasn't what I was going for. But then each time I try to go apply for a job, I sincerely always had this feeling that God was sitting right next to me, patiently nodding, going, go ahead, please, by all means, go ahead, apply, see what happens. I'll wait. You're just like, okay, fine. What's going on here? So I finally stopped trying to find a real job And it's like, okay, God, I'll start freelancing and let's just see what happens. So in 2018, I started freelancing, and my first client was Barna Research, if you've heard of them. And then shortly after that, United Bible Societies. And then after that, I started working with Biblica, which is a Bible translation company. And from there, the work just grew. And I just realized I'm talking at you and not forwarding my slides. So let me do that real quick. That's me. There we go. We'll skip on over to the team. 7 years later, we have Way Forth Collective. And we love working with organizations that are bringing a little bit more of God's kingdom to earth. And we're wired to make those promises a reality. And we love nonprofits. We've all worked in the nonprofit space collectively 70 years between the six of us. Like, we've been there. We know nonprofits are overstretched, they're under-resourced, but we also know the value of delivering on these promises. You deliver your promises, you grow your impact, and then you know what? Confidence grows in the donor community because you delivered your promise. And that confidence leads to increased funding, which allows you to grow your impact. But it starts with that delivery. We love helping them fulfill their promises so that it grows from there. So in these kind of 3 lunch and learn sessions, our hope is to give some real concrete skills, whether you're a project manager or not, whether you never hear that term outside of these sessions or not. We just want to help you get these ideas out of your head and into reality, and some tactics and tools of how to actually do that. So before I start, if you have any questions, I personally am not going to be looking at the chat, but Panit and Brandon will be, and they can either answer them, or at the end we can look up. And don't hesitate. You're not interrupting me if you throw something in there. I'll either answer at the end, or Brandon or Panit could answer in the chat. So please feel free to go to town. Let's just start out first. What the heck is project management? And so today we're going to kind of just unpack what's a project, what's the project manager, and what's the secret to all this. So first up, what's a project? And it's pretty straightforward. A project is anything with a start and end date, a goal, an owner, and some kind of success metrics. How will you know this was worth doing? How will you know you accomplished your goal? So, going back to college, a project of mine might have been a road trip, right? We were going to start at the beginning of August and at the end of August. The goal was to have fun, see a bunch of cities, and get back home alive in time to start school again, right? There were goals. We put money in it. We had a stake in it. We executed it. That was a project. Now, as adults and at Way Forth, projects are more complex. So we will run fundraising dinners or website launches, software upgrades, but the foundation's the same: start date, end date, goal, owner, metrics. Anything that can be defined by those, you got yourself a project. So now, what's a project manager? A basic definition would be this: a person responsible for planning, organizing, communicating, and driving the project until it's done. And I will tell you that the right project manager will help visionaries deliver with excellence. This is the person that's breaking down that big idea, thinking about it strategically, and helping move it forward. Practically speaking, what that means is they'll coordinate with teams, with resources. They're laying out the timelines, they're making sure staying on timelines, but they're also communicating with the broader group, like CEOs, board members, donors, keeping everyone informed who has some stake in the project about how it's going and where it's going. Here's the problem, especially in nonprofits. The PM often has to get this work done with people who do not report to you and have 5 other priorities pulling at them. So the PM usually has all the responsibility and none of the direct authority. And so you've still got to move this thing forward with all these layers and dynamics. So what's the secret to project management? The secret is communication. My husband likes to say, it's not rocket surgery. And he's right. It's not rocket surgery. But if you pause and think about it, like if you have siblings, if you have a spouse, if you have close friends or kids, you know that how you communicate has to be intentional if you really want to be heard and you want to make forward progress towards your goal. Here's an example. Just yesterday morning, my daughter, she's 11. She's amazing. She's beautiful, imaginative, creative. She's a joy. I adore her. She's also someone who hates putting clothes away. She'll wash her clothes, dry her clothes, leave them in the basket, piled up, because she never likes to put them away. Yesterday morning, she calls me down. Mom, I can't find a shirt. I go down. She's surrounded by piles of clothes, dirty, clean, all intermixed. And the way I wanted to communicate was like, come on, I told you to put these away. Like, I just wanted to jump right to it. But I had to pause and think, okay, is that going to help us achieve the goal of getting her to school on time? Is it going to help achieve the goal of building trust in our relationship as she's entering these tween years? And so instead I paused and I said, you know, Zoe, this is the crazy thing. Some people are really weird about this, but there's a thing called hangers. And some people take their clean clothes and they kind of shake them out, they put it on a hanger, or they fold them and they put this thing called a dresser. And so by making it a joke and just shifting the way I communicated, she laughed and rolled her eyes. Okay, Mom, I got it. You know, but it was received. Whereas if I had communicated in the way I wanted to initially, it would not have been heard. Oil and water would have happened right there. And the same thing applies. So if you want to be heard and make forward progress when you're dealing with all these layers and no one reports to you, you've got to make progress. You've got to be intentional about how you communicate, because poor communication wastes time. So we have what I call the golden rule of communication. Communicate with others in the same way you want others to communicate with you. Might sound a little familiar. But really what it's getting at is it's about efficiency. If we pause to take time to communicate effectively, it might not be efficient in the moment for you, but it will help the overall progress. So what I'll often say, what's most efficient for, what's most efficient for me is not always what's most efficient for we, the project, the goal, the team. And so we will hit the goal faster if I pause and be a smidge less efficient with my time and be super intentional with how I communicate. Two specific ways I want to highlight is being able to communicate in a way that's proactive and actionable. So let me share a little bit about that here. Proactive communication. Basically, some people can have the impression that project managers just run around. Did you do your job? Did you do your job? Did you follow the timeline? Like it seems very responsive, that there's not a whole lot of responsibility there. But we believe project managers, effective ones, should be very proactive. By being proactive, it helps the PM prepare their team. It increases trust because the person trusts that someone else is looking out for what's ahead. And it builds confidence in their work as well. And so kind of, I'll give you an example what proactive communication means on a day-to-day basis. Like, as far as like staying ahead of potential issues, if say Panit is on the team and trying to do where I'm running a project and she's a designer. If I see that she's got a deadline on Friday, I'm not going to wait till Friday to say, did you do your work? Or even worse, wait till Monday, you missed your deadline. No, on Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to be looking ahead and saying, hey, Panit, Friday's still going to work. Anything you see that could possibly get in the way of that. So it builds trust and confidence because I'm looking ahead on her behalf. I'm doing what I can to let her do what she does awesomely and stay focused on that and not worry about what's coming before or after. She knows someone's looking out on her behalf. So that's being proactive and anticipating the needs. But proactive is great, but it's really got to be coupled with action. And so actionable communication, I'm going to show you some examples. Here's one actually happened. It was 3-4 years ago. I'll unpack what you're looking at here in a second. But I was working with 2 or 3 different clients at the time, and I was working with one client on their project. My head was in their space, I was working on this project. I was in my zone over here. And this little message pops up. And I glance at it. And I'm not even going to read it to you because I glance at it. All I see is this block of text, something about a profile spreadsheet. It's blank. I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about because my brain is over here. I'm focused on this. You know what I did? I put little Slack reminder, remind me in 24 hours, remind me tomorrow. I was like, I can't unpack this right now. The bummer is if he had taken 45 seconds to a minute to put a little space in there, visual space, and link to the spreadsheet he wanted, I would have gone click. Oh yeah, filled it out, look at close, done, gone back without breaking my concentration. So this is the difference between this bottom one took 2 minutes to reply to, the top one took 24 hours and 2 minutes. So this was very efficient for him. If he'd taken 45 seconds or so to get the link and do this, he would have gotten faster. So when we're talking about actionable communication, that's the kind of intentionality we're talking about. Like another example would be emails. Let me highlight something actually real quick. Did you know, okay, emails, we all deal with them, right? On average, and I think this is being kind, you have 9 seconds to catch a person's attention in email. 60 to 80% of all emails are now read through this, right? So if you're writing an email and you need someone who doesn't report to you to do something, you have to think, how do I create something that will catch attention in less than 9 seconds as they're kind of scrolling through, right? So with that mentality, when you construct emails, like here's an example. No, yeah, this is short and it's being polite. I know you're busy. If you have time, could you please edit the article about the churches in Venezuela by tomorrow? It'd help us a ton. Thanks. Okay, scroll. But if you take a moment and say, hi, thanks in advance for the edits on the churches in Venezuela article. I am pointing you to the thing I want you to do. And I'm bolding, it's due COB tomorrow. I'm thinking ahead on your behalf so that it can go on the printer on Friday. I'm connecting it in less than 2 seconds. That person's scrolling on their phone. They see the link due tomorrow, go into the printer on Friday. They remember their responsibility and they're part of the project. That at least gets a flag. They'll follow it very quickly or they'll do it right then. This is going to get you more responses. And so this is all about, these are just some tools and tactics about how to communicate in a way to get people to do things that you need them to do when you have all the responsibility and the authority. It's about ensuring that the communication isn't just efficient for me, it's efficient for we, the project and the team, and ultimately the goal, and ultimately the impact, the people you're trying to serve at the end of it. So that's just a little bit about communications, sort of laying the foundation. In the PDF we send you, we'll have these links to one, we have a PM daily checklist in case anyone is a project manager. There's like, hey, what do I do each day? Like, how can I look at today in light of tomorrow, in light of the future? We have a template for project update email. Sometimes when you have to send those stakeholders or the board members a quick update. We have a video on writing emails that people won't ignore that unpacks a little more of what I was sharing. 5 questions to ask before starting a project if you're in that position. We have a email list that goes out every 2 weeks called Collective Thoughts, where we share tactical things like this every 2 weeks. And we're also available on LinkedIn, so you'll get links to all of these things. What's coming up next? Please do register for the next Sure Connections that's a tough one. Sure Connections session. On November 6th, Brandon is going to take the lead here and on ensuring successful project kickoff and delivery. So what's that first phase like when you have to really get something moving and going? And on December 4th, Annette will get to share about a few of these 7 deadly sins of project management. And those are literally drawn from mistakes we have all made, all of us on the team, what we've learned from and how to avoid them in the future. So thank you so much for your time. I will stop sharing and see if there are any questions or be open to any.
Dylan, who's down in Florida, this is a question I'll redirect to Jen or the team. Dylan works with Word of Life International at their South Central headquarters there, says this. Do you have any tips on how to read messages from those who do not communicate well? And he might be talking about me. So Dylan, if that's
Wayne, I would never say that. What are you talking about, Wayne? No, seriously. Like, I think that's my problem is like, I mean, I literally have my inbox open up over here and half of them are, I would say, anywhere from atrocious to barely readable. And so I know that my question, I guess, is more so thinking the opposite. How do we, as someone who are trying to communicate better, how do we then interpret the bad information we're getting in a productive way? Like, even like you said, remind me in 24 hours. Like, I think that's a great tip. Like, what are the tips you have more in that vein?
Right. Yeah, a couple of things come to mind, especially so our whole team is remote, but I have worked in person in offices in the past. When I was in person with someone, I used to have a boss who would write, oh my gosh, the guy, I love him dearly. He's such a good guy. And we still stay in touch, but his emails were pages. And I would literally print them out and go over and sit next to him. And everything was highlighted. I was like, okay, is this an action item or a thought? Is this a book idea or you want to do it? Like, and eventually he realized like, okay, but you can't just keep sending me tomes. But more practically, like when I get an email from someone and I'm like, I can't make heads or tails out of this at the moment. I will, if I need to respond, I'll just say, let me read and digest and get back to you tomorrow. I'll just like, so I've seen it, but what I'll do is usually go through and read it and then kind of speak it back to them. Okay, what I'm hearing you saying is, and put it in like 5 or 6 bullets. So it's super clear to them, like, this is how I'm interpreting what you wrote. If this isn't what you intended, please let me know. So it'll be a little bit of that back and forth. But same thing over text. And it depends on the familiarity level too, like the relationship level. Like, one of my teammates, he just flat out told me, if you don't understand what I said, just tell me. So I'll be like, okay, what does that mean? So we have a little bit more, we have a better relationship. I could just be straight, but I don't know what this means. Please reword this. But if it's someone I don't have that relationship with, you just got to take the time to kind of digest it, but then share it back with them in your words. And over time, it does get a little bit better. But that's usually what I have to do. It just takes time to communicate back to them. But bullets are really helpful in that because then you're not speaking back to them in paragraphs they have to digest either. I'm like, here's what I'm taking away from your email. Here's 5 bullets and this action item. Is that what you meant? And then they'll say yes or no. And that's how I usually build from there.
That is excellent. Dylan, any further comment on that?
No, I think that's great.
Okay,
I know, like, even
great.
like you said, like the larger thing of like, if my head's in one space and something pulls me to another space,
100%.
like trying to stay focused in one spot because it's just not productive. Right.
Yeah.
As my dad always said, no matter how good you are, you think you are at multitasking, you're not as good as you really think you are. And so,
yeah. Well, we use Slack for a lot of things. So Slack has a remind me in feature. I use that all the time. I'm like, remind me in 3 hours, remind me tomorrow. And then I know it's taken care of and I don't have 50 unread Slacks because that psychologically feels very draining. So I've read it and I'm just asking Slack to remind me about it the next day or 2 hours later, whatever. And that helps a ton.
One takeaway, Jen, that I've got personally from this I've got some coworkers that I would like to just give a shout out to and introduce in a few moments. But one thing in working professionally and then also working between home and having an aging parent in another state is I'm going to actually take the time to list and write out when I have something that falls under the context of how you described it to be a project, which it had a start time or an end time. And I'm going to make a list between now and the time we meet. And then I'm going to formulate a question for each one of those about how I can do better. So that's a takeaway I'll commit to following through.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I would be happy to share that. Before we close this segment, and I'll go back to Mary Beth and let her ask you any other questions that you may pre-discuss. I wanted to ask if there was anyone else that wanted to join in with a comment about what we just talked about or about project management. Okay. Fantastic. Well, what I'd like to do is, Mary Beth, I'm going to go back to you, and I think you and Jen might have a dialogue about some spiritual stories, et cetera, and her motivation. I'm going to go back to Mary Beth, and then to let you all know, if you would like to be introduced in the moments ahead, we're going to wrap up probably in less than 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, but I would like to invite anybody who would like to be on camera and introduce yourself to unlock your screen or open your screen up so we know to call on you. And Mary Beth, back to you.
Thank you, Wayne. Jen, thank you so much. This was incredibly helpful. And I think, again, something we can apply not only to our just everyday communications outside of work. But I did want to ask you, I know all three of you that have joined us today from Wayforth Collective are all believers, and you've all worked with Christian or in Christian organizations, now being with the nonprofits, letting that be your main focus. Would you share just briefly even your faith journey? I know you spoke about how the Lord let you go ahead and go to those interviews because he's a gentleman and he never gets in our way. But would you just share for a minute about your faith journey?
It's funny. Yeah, he's just a very kind, patient father who's like, no, please go. I'll wait. Go ahead, give it a shot. Just to get out of your system. Do what you got to do. So I grew up, my mom called herself, this is her own term for herself, as a cafeteria Catholic. She said she just picks and chooses what she likes and didn't like. But we grew up going to the Catholic Church and, had kind of a foundation there. And so I had a belief in God. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. God, Jesus. I always thought the story about Jesus turning water into wine was pretty cool. So when that came around every couple of years, but that was kind of where I held things. I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. But then when I was in college, I actually was sort of a product of door-to-door evangelism. The Navigators came by, knocked on my door, kind of laid out the bridge illustration. And for me at the time, it looked very logical. I was like, oh, I'm here, God's there, Jesus is the bridge. Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. So I kind of prayed the prayer that night, but I can't say that that night was like the moment everything changed. I really think over the next several years through college was really a time of kind of, trying to figure out what this was. And there was at one point, my junior year of college, actually, where I was pretty much, I was going to step away from the faith because I was like, you know what? This is like oil and water. My Christian friends and non-Christian friends don't understand each other. The music I like is different. The things I like doing is different. The humor is different. I just don't fit in with this Christian group anymore. And the gentleman who was running Navigators at the time took me to coffee. He's like, you know what, Jen? He said, I think you're trying too hard to figure out who God is by looking at these other people. They all grew up in Christian homes. They have, this has been embedded since they were young. And he said, you need to read the Bible on your own and learn, build a relationship with God on your own instead of looking at other people. And so I did that, and it was a game changer. Like, thank you, God, for Dan. And I, started reading the Bible, on my own. And my senior year of college, I actually started realizing that my applications were still sometimes different than the Christian friends I was around. But I was like, but this is what Jesus says. I was always coming back to and this is what I see, and this is what I'm praying through. So it always forced me to really go back and say, okay, God, if this is true, then what? And what do you need me to do in this situation? And from there, after college, I ended up moving out to Washington, D.C. because a friend needed a roommate. And after college, you do crazy things like that. But ended up staying out there 14 years, helped start a church, which I didn't know you could do. I thought churches just existed, right? But helped start, got to be a part of a multi-ethnic church plant in DC. And then I'll just wrap it quickly up, ended up meeting my husband out there. As it turns out, his whole family was in Colorado Springs. my whole family was in Denver after like a 90-minute drive away from each other. So after being married a year, we kind of looked at each other and said, this is silly. What are we doing? So we moved back to Denver. So that was kind of a big like, snapshot there, but that's a little bit of that journey. So.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. So, it doesn't sound like you ever really walked away from the Lord. You just kind of always drew a little closer, which is such a good testimony. Yeah.
I think it was catching this up going, wait a minute, why am I thinking this way or acting like this? Like, is it because these people said I should? Or is it because this was really what the Bible says and what Jesus meant? And sometimes I came back, I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. And other times I was like, actually, I have a different application. And I was at peace with that. So it was kind of, it just, to this day, I feel bad for pretty much every pastor or podcast, like everything I listen to, I'm like, yeah, I'm not taking that hook, line, and sinker. And I go back to the Bible, like I think it through myself and pray it through myself and figure out whether I agree with that application or that outcome or not. And so, so it's a journey.
It is 100% the best approach, though.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing.